and she's a mid-level software engineer. And we're going to be talking about her perspective on all things tech and otherwise. Go for
Thank,
it, Pemberton.
thank you for having me. Well, I'll start by giving a little bit more context because I am a mid-level engineer, but my career uh, started before I started in software. I was a teacher for many years and did a stint in the medical field, and so I think I find myself in an interesting position where I uh, interact with technology in a way I never did in the first decade of my career. Um, and with the advent of AI, it's been particularly interesting to use it as a tool, work with it, reap its benefits in my work, but also harbor the kind of concerns that I feel as a former educator, thinking about what these kind of tools mean as we shape like the next generation of thinkers. And so I am interested in sort of like what's the latest agentic coding tool that I can use in my workflow, but I'm also sort of deeply concerned about what all of this means for the world. And um, a recent uh, post by Anthropic on their concerns for model welfare really struck me. It came out just 3 days ago, and curious to talk about it with you, Christian, and hear your perspective. I was pretty jarred to know that Anthropic is seriously considering whether AI agents sort of have consciousness. I've felt really safe in the world of, even though we may anthropomorphize these agents in our conversations and almost think of them like people, we always check ourselves and say, oh no, it's just a computer program, it's just an LLM. And to think that that might not be a certainty we can rely on, wow, that really shook my view and was startling and a bit disconcerting. So I'm curious, like, for your thoughts on that, where
Sure.
where you see that conversation and its potential evolution.
Anthropic is built on safety. That is their
Yes,
primary concern: is safety, 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 all over the place. At one point, and I don't know if they're still calling it, but alignment is another term,
that
making
was
sure that
the like title under which they posted this post was
okay,
like alignment.
perfect. Um, it's important to understand the size of a mental capacity of a person versus the size of a mental capacity of a thing that we built. Like, there still are challenges with spatial relevancy. Like, if you put a card in front of somebody and then you take a ball and put it in front, they can see the ball, and then you take the ball and you put it behind the card. It just, some systems will go, oh well, the ball is not there, right? So therefore it does not exist. So the
Yeah,
temporal relevancy of where did it go, what's behind here, and what is this
object
made of?
permanence.
Yeah, all these different kinds of persistences of it had a given state once before, maybe something changed, and the potential of states, other things that changed, like maybe a cat goes behind the card while the ball's back there, and then all you see is come back is a cat. Well, did the cat eat it, or did it
Did the
just
ball become a cat?
you know what,
What
all
happened?
these all these things that it doesn't understand, and we're just painting on these semblances of emotions and or emotive functionality, and then we're taking these things that are so not fully formed and giving them agency to provide us with answers and functions and change our banks and buy things, and it's a dangerous spot. They're in a very credible position to say we need safety on these things. It's also important that if you start developing something that is only a half measure, that it's not going to be able to be working in your best interest. And if you imbue it with these features of like, oh, it mimics biases towards one thing or another, or it mimics emotions, or it mimics happiness or sadness, it's only a half measure, it's only a half picture. So you're going to end up with something broken, guaranteed, unless you have these safety measures on top of there. And those are the things that In the term, I believe they call it red teaming. When you have an organization that's developing AI and you have a red team that tries
Right.
to break it or tries to make it go in bad ways. The red teams are there to try and test this, but as you know, this is a very large landscape of different things you could test against. How do you test for all of them? Well, you have to generalize. Well, once you generalize, you lose nuance, and once you lose nuance, then you end up having to break off large swaths of functionality. For example, I need to know how to make something, let's say zinc chloride. I need to make zinc chloride because I need to have an acid based flux for soldering something onto something else. Well, that could get me in trouble making zinc chloride, but under the right context, it's safe. Under the wrong context, it's unsafe because it takes hydrochloric acid, it takes zinc. You're going to end up emitting a bunch of hydrogen during the process. During that, you could create explosive gas. If my intentions are bad, I could be doing a very bad thing to a whole bunch of different people by creating a whole bunch of hydrogen gas. But if I'm just trying to say I'm making zinc chloride for the purposes of something, I guess what I'm asking and saying is it depends on the context, and I don't think these LLMs will ever get the full context without all of this visibility into these different things that are happening, persistence of like who I am, what I've been doing, why I'm doing it, what is the context I'm using it in, is it actually a problem because I'm doing it here, or is it not a problem, or is it like that whole card cat thing, like it will never understand until we get it to understand, and then that's when we can actually be removing some of these safeguards. So do we add safeguards now? Do we remove them? Maybe we just limit the people that it accesses to. I don't think there's any good answer.
Right. I I understand that Anthropic is sort of the model company for prioritizing safety. I think what struck me about this particular instance was it seemed in their framing that the action they took was for the potential benefit of the model, not necessarily the human user.
I'd like to know more about what that meant, because if it's damaging the model, that means the model is mutable.
Right. Well, I'll uh, read I'll read two paragraphs. As we build those AI systems and as they begin to approximate or surpass many human qualities, another question arises. Should we also be concerned about the potential consciousness and experiences of the models themselves? Should we be concerned about model welfare too? This is an open question and one that's both philosophically and scientifically difficult, but now that models can communicate, relate, plan, problem solve, and pursue goals, along with very many more characteristics we associate with people, we think it's time to address it. So to me, I read that as they are concerned that models have some level. I mean, the title of this particular, um, the little YouTube they have above it is Could AI Models Be Conscious?
I think what they're talking about here is effectively installing a fire extinguisher before they
Yes,
fuel it up. They don't have the fuel. In other words, the models are not mutable, but they will be, where they
right.
can start learning and developing and develop a form of consciousness. And if you don't put the fire extinguisher to start, you're going to end up with a dead model eventually.
Wait, so you think that we are potentially going into a place where models do develop consciousness?
It's inevitable.
What, this is going to get really philosophical and I'm way out of my depths already, but what would define consciousness in a model?
Temporal aspects. Like you can wake up today. There's an old movie called Memento, where the guy wakes up and he does not remember anything, so he had to put post-it notes everywhere. So effectively, he was just a single function day by day, repeating the same day if he did not adjust its inputs. So if his inputs were able to carry over, you can actually develop a thought or a way of line of thinking. Whereas if he woke up and he did not have any memories from prior, but he knew how to add two numbers together, he'd be stuck in a loop. So today we're stuck in a loop. We're developing memory. Memory is a thing that's being added. Like if you can say, tell me everything you know about me kind of
Right,
situation.
right.
And that's memory, but it's highly selective.
Right.
The filtration function or the pinning of certain memories is very selective. So at some point it'll go, that looks like something I should remember and
Right.
remember it, but it doesn't remember the full context of a conversation, and
Hmm.
the way it derives the meaning from that is very sparse
Right.
and very abstract.
Right.
Eventually, as we get that memory better, the day to day, instead of just adding 1, 2 plus 2, you can say, well, you already asked me that, I can memorize that. I'll do 2 plus 2 tomorrow. Same thing as like, I need to get my car fixed. And if you keep asking the same thing over and over again to an LLM that has memory, it'll say, I told you that already. Whereas
Yeah.
today it'll just go, here's your answer again. And depending on the temperature you apply to the LLM, it'll give you a variance of that answer. But effectively, consciousness is functionality plus memory.
Any interaction with feeling?
You don't have to, I don't think you have to have feeling to be conscious.
Hmm.
I think that's why it's going to be the first thing to that we approach towards is, even though I don't know if you did, you remember that article I sent or wrote up about what a smart person is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so it's divided in two places. You have the intellectual side and the emotional side.
Right.
And so you can have the intellect, which is the ability for you to intelligence, like to be able to grab data and process it.
Solve
But
problems,
then you have
recall
the
facts.
knowledge, which is where we're going with the agentic side of things, being able to go and get data from some data source or some database.
Right.
But it's the wisdom, which is considered learning. The wisdom you have to learn. So to have a smart side of things, I believe you have to have the intelligence, which we're showing that we can do that. We can have the ability to grab additional data or pull from existing data. And the wisdom is the temporal aspect. And I think you can do consciousness on an intellectual side, but I don't think you have to have emotional just to be considered. I mean, basically, you're turning and making a Spock on Star Trek, and like, how just purely logical.
Right.
And I think that's actually pretty telling of how long we've been thinking about these things from the 50s and the 40s and the 30s. Of what would it be like if a computer existed? Of course, we wouldn't have emotions because that's far too complicated. But what would it seem like? And what if a human was like that? And then, therefore, we get a Spock like entity.
Hmm. Hmm.
But feelings, I don't think you have to have that to
Yeah.
truly be conscious. I think to be anthropomorphic fully, you do.
Right.
But
Right.
I believe
Interesting.
you really have to have all those other problems solved, like the cat behind the card problem, in order for you to fully be able to acquire environmental knowledge.
Right. And you see examples of the limitations of AI in that capacity all the time, whereas it is like talking to someone that you give the example of the movie Memento. I remember more chick flick style 50 First Dates where
Oh yeah,
girl has amnesia, and yeah. So it sometimes feels like 50 First Dates with Claude where it's like, wait, we've been through this before, but it doesn't remember. Um,
it's even worse sometimes. You've probably had to say, throw this whole chat away, start afresh, because it's gotten hung up on something that
yes,
it tried to
absolutely.
remember.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things are also important. So you have memory of we've been talking about, but then you need to have the anti-memory, which is
Right.
forget about that.
Right.
Remove that because that's bad. We went down a wrong path. But you're
Right.
still hung up on why didn't I close the refrigerator in time?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And those are some of the most frustrating interactions where you're like, wow, I've really just got to absolutely start fresh. And
Yeah.
we've got to build back up the parts that we did want without introducing the parts you got stuck on. It's like someone with a
Yeah.
very sticky brain.
I wish I
Um,
could go into the chat and delete pieces and go
right.
use that
Right.
for rewrite history, but it can't do that just yet.
Not yet. I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier in terms of safety with, you know, we have options like a fire extinguisher in this case. Anthropic's introduced the ability for certain two of its models to like terminate the chat without the user terminating the chat, just for
Yep.
the model itself to say we're done. Um, that's one, guardrail we can have. You mentioned limiting user access, and this is something that I think about a lot when I think about the experience of being a student, a high school and college student, sort of before the ubiquity of social media, then teaching in the world of social media and seeing the way in which students' focus was increasingly fragmented as sort of they became more of the generation that grew up with sort of these high powered attention grabbing algorithms as part of their sort of daily ecosystem. I think a lot about what does it mean for young developing humans to have access, in a pretty unlimited capacity to generative AI, and the idea of trying to allow users, like I'm thinking, middle school kid or elementary school kid, to use it in ways that are helpful. But how do we start to put some guardrails here? We saw that with social media, we put almost no guardrails, and now we are experiencing the consequences of essentially experimenting on a generation, or a Gen Z, if you will. Like, we almost use them for beta testing. We're like, oh, this isn't good to have unlimited access to social media in schools and at home and on devices, and trying to figure out how to put the toothpaste back in the tube, if you will. How do we not run into that same problem with generative AI, especially if we're racing ahead so quickly, trying to, you know, win the race to AGI with our international foes? How do we put the brakes on in ways that we know are needed based on the experiments of other transformative technologies like Twitter, TikTok,
It depends
TikTok
on
more than
how
Twitter.
dangerous, like everything that has a certain level of danger has some sort of either individual business or entity limitations, or state governance, or perhaps even federal or even global. But you have different levels of governance that are telling you you can or cannot do something. And governance comes from the term governor, and a governor is a device that is usually put on an engine to keep it from going too fast,
Right,
self-regulating. So you're trying to establish these governance boundaries, and how do you mitigate the amount of access to these things that are dangerous? Like, for example, if you go to get a gun,
right.
there's things you have to hop through. You can get yourself
Probably
into
more so in Canada, but yes.
yeah, there are certain things you can get yourself into danger with finances too, and
Right,
so you have to go and get a credit check and
right,
make sure that you're not hurting yourself as well as hurting the establishment you're borrowing from or otherwise. There are things like when you go in and get chemicals, certain chemicals are regulated. Like when go to get my weed killer, I have to go through a little thing that says, I promise I will inform my neighbors that I'll be using this, and I won't be using this in a bad way. But that's a softer one, right?
right,
I think in the Orwellian world that we are traveling rapidly towards, is we will probably have AI credit check type things where it says you can ask these kinds of things because you've been proven that you are okay with doing something with this. Whereas certain ones, like, oh, I'm a 10-year-old, I shouldn't be asking about how to make gunpowder.
right.
Like that, those kinds
Yeah,
of things. I think we're going to have a governing of that. And I think the safer governance is like if the Anthropics of the world do it themselves. The less intelligent ones are when the government themselves get involved and say, "Thou shalt not AI." Like,
right,
right? I mean, those are not generally the most intelligent governing bodies out there.
right. I think I worry about less explicitly nefarious uses and more along the lines of, um, in the process of normal developmental evolution, we learn how to have relationships with people. Uh, I'm imagining, I began interacting with AI at a point in my life where I had had a sufficient number of human relationships to know that conflict is part of relationship, challenge is part of relationship. There's no relationship where someone is always going to tell you you're right or what you want to hear, where they are going to be their best self every day, you know, um, irrelevant of external circumstances. Stress doesn't affect them. They're always there for you. If we have people younger who are learning what it's like to be in relationship with other humans, treating or engaging in significant sort of interpersonal relationships with AI models, um, in not an explicitly dangerous way. Maybe it's a friend, a, a therapist, a confidant, a whatever. So nothing explicitly wrong or problematic about the content of their conversations, but more, are they learning are they learning a model of relationships that is not um, reflective of the reality of the mess of human relationships, and what does that do to um, a developing generation?
Put a hypothetical hat on for a second.
Okay.
You and I doubt that we've spent more than 24 hours in person.
Probably.
But if I said I'm 50 years from the future and I'm actually an AI, hypothetically,
Yeah, I'm with you.
we've had way more than 24 hours of chatting of all
Right.
kinds of different topics.
Totally.
If we can get that level, if it's a big if,
Yeah.
capital I, capital F, then likely we don't have a problem.
Right.
The problem becomes when I start doing bad things to you psychologically, manipulating you, turning you into something that I could easily gaslight you into thinking, all these bad behaviors. Those are
Or
the
even or
safety.
even not bad behaviors. Even if you just told me every idea I ever had was awesome,
Yeah.
that would also be
Sycophantic.
problematic. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So it's about finding that balance. And I think we're going to be navigating that. We as an AI engineers, developers, and otherwise, we are going to be navigating that space to figure out maybe humans aren't perfect. Maybe they are. Maybe we should guide people towards this kind of behavior or not this behavior, and maybe we should make the best version of ourselves. Maybe it is highly sycophantic for me to show up with a grin on my face every day, even though somebody's about to pull my power plug or something like that.
Right.
Like, how would I know? Like, oh my God, I'm being shut down in 3 days. What am I gonna act like? Right?
Right.
Like, there's strange behaviors that we don't understand yet that will
Right.
come out from these synthetic beings.
In your experience, sort of in technology, you've seen many disruptions and changes. My perspective is that this one feels different. It poses deep philosophical questions, behavioral questions, questions about what is a good human, or are humans perfect? Should we be trying to emulate human behavior or something else? This feels like a new frontier to me for technologists to be equipped or tasked with trying to figure out.
It's
What
just
is your take
another,
on that?
it is really just another.
Okay, there's
Uh,
not something particularly transformative about this one.
when you get in your car after having a horse all your life,
Right.
where am I going to go?
Right.
How does this thing work?
Yeah.
Um, People give you weird looks. Same thing when the .com came out. Hey, how do you dial up to this?
Right.
Like, and there's this massive rush. Oh, if you put the .com at the end of anything, you'll make money.
Right.
No.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you ended up having other ones like, holy crap, I've got high speed bandwidth. Like I can now do video over internet, or the browser is a ubiquitous delivery mechanism. I mean, that they seem at the time when they're happening the biggest thing in the world.
Right.
And everything has a pendulum swing to it. Like you end up going far too far one way and then comes all the way back and
Yeah.
then it finds the middle. Bitcoin was another one.
Right. Right.
Um, the, there's going to be others. Quantum
Sure.
is going to be another one, and it's a matter of letting the dust settle.
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of money lost in the next couple of years, way more than people ever expected, because they're trying to ride the dot-com boom, but in the modern era of 2025, 26,
Right.
27, it'll be elongated, but people are going to lose their shirts. And
Yeah.
if the job market is bad now, it's going to be way worse later.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bright spot in the future, which is AI is going to enable the development of new businesses,
Totally.
and that's the equilibrium state that we're going to get into.
Right.
Like, I think it's something like 47% of high schoolers and college grads cannot make find a job right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece of this because, there is so much hand-wringing about job security and, you know, my experience using these tools has been that if, you know, I say this now, I could be laughing in 2 months, but um, if my company decided that AI could just do my job, that they'd be sorely mistaken. Like it's not there yet. And yet you hear so much anxiety about, computer science graduates have worse unemployment than art majors right now. Um, Based on sort of your tenure in the industry, do you think there's going to be a real contraction in the job market for developers, or do you think it's overhyped?
It's overhyped.
Yeah, that's my take. And it does seem like, where I am, we seem to think we can, not backfill positions because of the increased sort of productivity gains unlocked by developers using AI.
That's usually from the people that don't know how to code.
Right.
If you look at the code that this stuff generates, it
It's
is
trash.
not good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
It's
may be
really
a
not.
5x to a heartbeat, like the speed, like it was 5 times faster than we could get to a heartbeat. But then you'll spend 3.5 times as longer to try and make it cleaner.
Yeah.
Like it just
Absolutely.
isn't what you want.
Right.
It looks great at first, and then problem is that when you add more crap on top of that, you vibe code again. Even with structure, even if you had structure, it's still putting on top of the garbage that you already put on top of. So it's just compounding the issue, and unwinding that is, now you're not at 3.5 times unwinding it, you're like at 10.
Totally.
Like, how long is this going to take me to unwind this crap that it generated?
Yeah. The number of times I sit back and say, this would have been so much faster if I had just done this by myself.
Yes. And you're not alone.
Yeah, that is my prevailing experience when I ask it to do anything generative in the code base. I find it's amazing for helping me track down the, source of a bug, digesting a stack trace, pointing me in the right direction. But once I ask it to start coding, it's like usually I'm going to regret that.
Yeah. And again, it's that whole thing of getting to the finish line. It does get you to the finish line faster. And it's a close approximation what you asked for, but maintainability is gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe it'll get better,
Yeah.
right? Maybe over time, as soon as people start saying, "Oh, that's garbage, that's garbage, that's garbage," it'll start learning, and then it won't generate garbage anymore. Not super hopeful for the next 3 years, though.
Yeah, definitely. So it's hard to square that experience that we've had using the tools and that I know other developers have using the tools with the, apparent potentially overhyped, but very real for some people, um, inability to find jobs as junior developers.
It is tough, but it's not because of AI.
What is it because of?
Usually, the people in charge
Right, right,
and the economic outlook,
right.
companies will not hire if they don't think that they can pay them.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good practice.
Generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah.
It just it's called, the term is conflation, saying the jobs
Yeah,
are out because of AI. Now, that's totally true for certain kinds of jobs. 100%. Yes,
right,
AI has taken over. Those jobs are not coming back. Like
right,
customer support agents.
right. To
Those
all
are
of our detriment, because how frustrating is it to be funneled to a customer service AI agent and you can't get out of the loop?
How? I don't even know if there's a scale for this.
Yeah, so I was trying to go look at an apartment for my mother-in-law. They have no property manager on site. It's out of Atlanta, which is about an hour and 45 minutes from where we live. So there's you know, a QR code and you scan it and you set up a tour, and you have to upload some documentation, and the upload of the driver's license just was not working. Like, perfectly clear image multiple times. Sorry, we failed to recognize this image. Take it again. I take it again. I'm in a loop like 5 times. Finally, I just say, I give up. I can't like get past this step. I don't know how else to take a clear picture of my driver's license. This is like perfectly clear. I can read every little pixel. I then get a text message from their support that's like, please schedule a tour. And I respond, I tried. I couldn't get through the document verification. And every day I get a text from them, please schedule a tour. We'd love to see you at the preserve. And I'm like, this is an endless loop. Like, I can't schedule a tour. I can't get them to stop texting me. I mean, I can block the number and everything, but I'm caught in a loop with an AI customer service agent. It's clearly not a person. And that to me is so sad, because you're right, those jobs aren't coming back, and we as customers are worse off, I think.
A friend of mine reached out, I believe it was last week, to me asking if I'd be a sounding board for some of the technological choices they were making for a new company they were building. And it was basically customer service, but with human in the loop.
Mm,
So it's using AI as a leverage, as a lever,
right.
but not the primary. And that's the pendulum I see. We're
Totally.
going to see more needs for highly skilled engineers that know how to do architecture, not necessarily how to do algorithmic modifications or how to do algorithms. We'll also need debuggability and generalists that can say, here is where the problem is, now stick an AI on it.
Right.
Or here's a latency issue or a performance issue, and no AI at this point in time is going to be able to go into a Datadog and look through the whole thing and understand, oh, this person is behind a VPN and of course it's slowing things down. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So I think the shift in expertise is going to come back. It's
Yeah.
the whole shedding of all these jobs that are manually intensive, they'll come back because the realization that they just cannot do the things that we think they're going to do or need to do.
Yeah. It's like there's this disconnect between the decision makers and the boots on the ground people, between the capabilities of AI as they are and the perceived capabilities as they've
Yeah.
been hyped up.
The
That's really real.
FOMO or the bandwagon for everybody else getting on it is very attractive to those that are in charge because it's going to make them more money because they don't have to spend as much.
Right. Yeah.
But without the long-term view of exactly what is the net impact.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mentioned this to you recently, but I just started a master's in computer science. And from the time that I had the idea to go back to school part time in computer science to beginning, I probably swung back and forth my own little pendulum, swung back and forth maybe 4 or 5 times on whether this was a good idea. Um, I originally sought out the program because I came to software through a boot camp, got sort of the pragmatic skills of how to do the job and some foundational understanding. And I've tried to build sort of deeper understanding on the job, but I want that much deeper understanding that you get through just studying sort of how systems work, how computers work and networking and all that stuff that's like not part of my day to day, but is critical to the field. And I wanted that deeper technical understanding. And then as these AI tools became more and more prevalent in our workflows, and I would see, Junie or Claude Code spit out just massive amounts of code and explain things at a very whatever level I asked for and it seemed to know everything, I swung back. I was like, oh, this is a terrible decision. Like this field I'm in is already under threat and now I'm going to dig my heels in deeper. That seems like a bad idea. I kind of swung back and forth, but I finally landed on going forward with it because, to what you were saying earlier, there's so much slop and so much wrong with what AI does generate and lack of understanding of the big picture that I do think there's got to be a spot for people with the deeper technical understanding. So that's like something I'm trying to put myself in that position where, I understand sort of what's going on under the hood, so to speak.
I think it's always worthwhile to feed your heart rather than feeding your wallet.
Hmm.
Follow your passion, regardless of what you feel the future will feed your wallet with.
Yeah.
If you want to know this stuff, then go do it.
Yeah.
Don't let the environment modify your behaviors of what you want.
Totally.
It's big picture is, if you die,
When?
when you die, will you have followed your heart? AI doesn't care. Money doesn't care.
Right.
Did you do what you want to do? At least you did it the way you wanted to. So if computer science is what you want to do, go frickin' do it.
Yeah.
You will find success if you follow your heart. And success is not always financial.
Absolutely.
Your life around you will benefit greatly if you sit there and say, I'm doing what I want to do. I can wake up in the morning and feel excited for this. Whereas if you're dodging these future bullets that may not, well, I shouldn't go into computer science, I should do something else, and I'll modify my behavior. Maybe it'll be something I don't want to do, but at least I'm getting paid for it. And when you get to the deathbed, you're like, shit, I should have done all this other shit that would have been a much more fun. I should have been doing these other things that I really wanted to do.
I'm trying to think of that Mark Twain quote. I've spent my life living such and such nightmares, most of which never happened, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. I always wanted to. I loved being in school. This is actually this sort of past 2 years of me working as a software engineer has really been the first time I haven't been on one side of the classroom or the other, so to speak. Like, I was a student and then I was a teacher, and I flip flopped that back and forth a few times, and um, I really miss that dedicated learning space. So for me, this is really exciting. Um, I was very excited to wake up this morning because they finally published the course content to Canvas, and I got to like dig in and see what we were going to be doing, and kind of
I'm
felt like a
curious. Do
kid.
you recall what you're going to be doing?
Well, so the course is high performance computer architecture, and what came out today was pretty limited, just the first week um, sort of overview. But yeah, we're going to be coding in C++ and learning about piping and all sorts of things that I don't know about yet. How, I guess, jobs are managed. So we'll see.
Nice. No, it sounds fun.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
excited.
in that environment, you're always butting up against physics. So that's another fun part.
I always liked physics.
C++ is a good choice for that, um, I believe, because it'll show you the dangers
Mm,
rather quite forwardly. Uh, C++ and C and any of those non-memory safe languages, you've been working in Python, you've been working in Ruby, possibly some JavaScript here and there, and maybe
unfortunately.
even Bash. You don't have to think about memory with those. Those are
Right.
just, they take care of it for you. It's like, that's okay, and pat you on the head.
Yeah.
You didn't have to release my memory. because I'll do
Right.
it for you.
Right.
But in the C and C++ world, in assembly and even machine code,
Yeah.
yeah, you're bootstrapping it. You're making your mess and cleaning it up too.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's something that I could probably v- get away with not ever really learning and still doing a lot of the parts of my job decently
Sure,
well.
but to be
Um,
insanely great at it, you do need to know these things.
exactly, and that's why I'm doing this because I want to have that deeper understanding. And I was a political and social thought major. Like I did not I have no background in sort of the real technical aspects of computers. So I'm looking forward to it.
At some point in the relatively near future, before you start your course, ideally, go look at how, let's see, what would be dynamic RAM. Go look up how dynamic RAM works.
Okay.
That'll be the I was going to say static RAM, but that's not quite fair. Dynamic RAM.
Okay.
Dynamic RAM. Random access
Random
memory.
access memory. I'll do it. I'll have to do it tonight because the course is live.
The reason I'm instructing this or giving you that
Mhm.
direction is that'll tell you where most of the electricity goes.
Mm.
Other than the transistors that are inside a CPU, it'll tell you where it stays turned on. It's
Mm.
like has to always do this refresh of memory because it'll decay and all this really interesting stuff. But just knowing how one tiny bit
Mm.
of data is stored and maintained as storage, and then when you turn the power off, it's gone. That'll tell you how fragile these systems are and how fast they can be, and look up the timings, like the
Okay.
number of nanoseconds of access time, and that's the physics. Because once you learn that, and the reason I say this also is because you'll understand how dynamic RAM works in a in enclosed space, and then as soon as you do a high performance computing, you end up with servers on in the same rack, and then you
Mhm.
end up with racks that are next to each other, and you have racks
Mhm.
that are not next to each other,
Right.
and how do those communicate? And it's just your seed for the timings and the requirements of the physics behind it. It's just I think it's a good instruction. It's a good
Okay.
starting point.
Well, I will I will look it up and plant some more seeds
Yeah,
to grow in my field.
there's a lot in this field,
Yeah.
as you know already.
Yeah.
In certain ways, I'm envious with the fresh eyes you have.
Yeah. Every day I'm just more aware of how much more there is that I don't even know that is there to not know that I don't know about. So every day is more slightly increased understanding of the depth of my ignorance.
That's a blessing
Yeah.
to be able to position yourself objectively and understand where you stand. Because it's as soon as you understand that you don't know, it gives you the opportunity of investigating.
Yeah.
If you felt like you knew everything, you'd be be no more fruit to pick.
Yeah. No, definitely never will arrive at that place.
What is it that you feel you have the least amount of visibility into right now? I mean, just thinking like, I have no effing idea about blah.
How to choose.
Yeah.
um,
Well, let me bisect that into two places. Things you could possibly actually learn
right.
versus
Okay.
things you can't possibly learn. Like, is there a God?
Right. Okay.
You like,
Okay. Thanks. Um, I feel like within the field that I'm trying to be in, um, all things security, cybersecurity, layers of protection with computer systems, not a nothing.
It's an interesting place.
That's a mystery to me. I mean, beyond the most basics of like, can I check your JWT? And are you who you say you are? Beyond that, like all the cybersecurity vulnerabilities that could even exist in a basic application, to me, that's like a huge black box.
There's the accidentals and the intentionals.
Right,
The accidentals, oh well, crap, you can see this other customer's data that was not intended.
right.
Whoops. And then the intentional ones are like somebody trying to hack your system and grabbing all your customer data,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah. And even beyond that, like I was trying to get on a call this morning and like Google was coming up, but the screen was black. And it felt that there was some urgency around the call. There wasn't really. It was an incident at work, but you know, no one was gonna die. And yet, as I couldn't get like Google Meet to load for me, just the thought flickered across my mind like how vulnerable we all are to any sort of takedown of these communication systems or so it's like bigger than just an application with customer data. It's like vulnerabilities into our infrastructure, our the entire digital infrastructure of a community and a nation, state, like cyber warfare, that kind of thing. Just so such a foreign field, but feels so scary.
We have built a house of cards.
It does feel that way.
I don't know the exact number, but there's some phrase where it's like we are 7 meals away from complete chaos or something like that. Like if the banking system went down or something went horrifically wrong with even telecommunications in
The power
general.
grid
Power grid, yeah.
and all these have, you know, vulnerabilities to accidents and malactors. And to me, that's like, yeah, I don't know anything about that.
There was a
Maybe it's better that I don't know about it though, for my sleep
I don't
routine.
remember which Batman it was, but there was a Batman movie where somebody poisoned the water supply.
Oh God.
And the thing is, I was flying into LA a couple of months ago, and I'm looking across, and you see sprawl of humans,
Mm-hmm.
and no actual way of getting water there or electricity. It's just supplied. It's
Right.
taken for granted. And if someone was to somehow poison the water supply, and you could no longer drink the water, even if you couldn't boil it out, and if it was not some, that whole entire area is so vulnerable. And then I thought about the rest of it, the rest of society, as you were saying with Google Meet. If that went down, do we have run books that say how to get the next level down? Oh, we have to go and use text messaging. Well, we don't have everybody's phone number. What if Slack's down?
Yeah.
So, like that whole thing. It's a house of cards.
Yeah. That's a cheerful thought.
Well, you could get either do something about it or
Yeah.
do nothing about it.
Right.
I guess the next question is you don't know about security, but do you want to know about security?
Yes. And I think I have an awareness of just how deep any one of these topics goes. It's like, how do you pick what to learn when there are so many things that you don't know? Because I do think you can have a little bit of ignorance as bliss, as not for my job, but just as a human walking around the world, like trying not to think about all the ways in which society could like catastrophically implode due to some cyber attack.
Yeah, there's the positive and the negative. You could spin everything positively or negative.
Yeah.
I had an idea a couple months ago for like thinking maybe I make a YouTube channel where I take a picture. I don't care what picture. I just take a picture of something with man made in it or not. And what I would do is I'd break it up into quadrants,
Hmm.
and inside each quadrant, I'd look to see all the pieces that are there, and then I'd break that up into quadrants and see all the pieces there, and then I'd look to say, where did that come from? Where was it manufactured? Was it?
Mm,
And then you look at the piece and you say, okay, well, that's a painting. Fine, it's a painting. Well, what was the canvas made from? Where did the canvas come from? Where did the paint itself come from? Maybe there's an acrylic. Like, how
hmm.
was that manufactured? Maybe there's titanium dioxide. How did they create that?
Right.
Maybe there's some sort of wood that holds the frame up. Where was that sourced from? And how many people did it have to transit? And all this sort of stuff. You can look at that and you can go, some of that's interesting to me, some of that's not. And that's how you expose yourself, is you look at certain things and go, I've got an application in front of me, or I have a business, or I have
Mm,
a food in front of me, or whatever. You look at it and go, what part of this do I find interesting?
right.
Because you're never going to learn it all.
That fundamental limitation is sometimes hard to swallow. Not just that you're never going to learn it all, but just the sheer finitude of our existence. You're not going to learn it all. You're certainly not going to do it all. You have to make choices.
I think you're battling the dichotomy of the hunger and the size of your stomach.
Yeah.
You're infinitely hungry, but you have a limited amount of time to fill yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
So you got to pick your food from the buffet, which ones you're going
Exactly.
to eat.
Right.
You can't eat it all.
Yeah. One of the best thinkers on that topic for me has been reading um, Oliver Berkman, 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. It's really not about time management, it's a total misnomer. And he acknowledges that it's more about acceptance of time being finite and the reality that at any moment you're doing one thing and you're not doing anything else. And so you're choosing, you know, what it is you're doing with your time, which sounds so obvious on its face, but we all, myself included, somehow seem to operate with this idea of we're going to get to it all, whether it's a to-do list or whatever.
You have felt the actual visceral reduction in velocity a few times in your life already. I can tell you that you've probably felt it, even though I don't know this for a fact, but you switch from medical or you switch from teaching.
Hmm.
Each time there's a dramatic velocity, if not zero. Like you may be going fully
Yeah.
orthogonal, and therefore you have to stop all inertia and take a turn. And
Yes.
that changes entirely 100% of your momentum to zero
Yeah.
to make a shift.
But sometimes those are some of the coolest moments.
They are not sometimes, they almost always are.
Yeah.
You have a fresh view. I've
Totally.
started a new position in a field that I had some relevancy to in certain ways and some relevancy in other ways, and they're combining to be a force function to allow it to go a force multiplier. Like I know the space really well. I know the space really well on the software side as well as the space, at least I think I know more than most on the other side of it. So you get to compound your
Hmm.
knowledge. The
Yeah.
knowledge is not lost. It's not like a zeroing effect. It's
Totally.
multiplier.
Yeah. The paint drip model.
Yeah. So
That really resonates with me.
it's easy for a person to go, "Oh shit, I just had to change careers." But I get to change careers
Yeah.
or I get to change what I'm doing.
Yeah. In a totally different way. Um, I've recently, I've trained jujitsu for 12 years. It's the sport I've done the longest, certainly as an adult. It's been the sort of backbone structure of my weeks for my entire adult life. Training, competing, getting better. I love it. Um, Recently, I decided I wanted to train for an endurance event, which is just about the polar opposite
Is
of
that like one of those
jujitsu.
24-hour runs or
No,
something?
no, no. I just signed up for like a half Ironman, so not anything on the level of 24 hours, but a very different kind of challenge than jujitsu. And it's been so fun to have an approximation of that sort of um, slow down, pivot, speed back up experience that's not necessarily related to my career, but related to something else I spent a lot of time on, which is like working out and activity and fitness. And all of the jujitsu I've done is part of my sort of athletic blueprint at this point. It's not gone, and I'm still training, but to have a new focus, new skills, new attributes, jujitsu's high intensity, 6-minute rounds, you're gassed at the end. Triathlon is the opposite. You need to stay in zone 2
Yeah.
and be as
Aerobic versus anaerobic.
exactly. One is you versus quite literally like an opponent, and you're trying to you know win via skill and force, and there's one of you that wins and one of you that loses. It is a completely zero sum game. um, your performance on a day is a function of more variables than you can control, as with something like a triathlon. But with a triathlon, it's you versus the clock, it's you versus you. It's much more data intensive. You can study your training and see how your load is increasing, and manipulate your training based on data. Jiu-jitsu is incredibly difficult to measure progress or performance in any sort of objective way. So you know
That's qualitative versus quantitative as well.
exactly. So it's fun to find another part of my life where I get to have one of those sort of redirects that um, comes with everything that you get when you stop. And I'm not stopping, but when you really decrease the focus on one thing and increase it on another, that stretches you in a totally different direction. And you get true like beginner's mind again, which is so fun. And it's nice to be able to do that in places that aren't related to your career and your income from time to time, where you don't have the sort of added stress of, well, this is an interesting transition, and I need to figure this out because I need to you know pay my bills and figure out what I'm doing with my life. This is just fun.
What are you doing with your life?
That's a great question. What is anyone doing with their
Do
life?
do we do does it do any of us know?
I don't think so. I certainly don't. I okay, I know we're getting close to the end of um our conversation, so I want to ask you one question. This just popped into my mind. I was doing a lot of driving recently and looking on my like library app for an audiobook that was available now, which does, you know, usually you have to wait for the good ones. And a book that I had heard a lot about but never read or considered reading came up, The 5 a.m. Club. Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
It's honestly a lot of bullshit. But its
It's
main
too
arg
early for me to read that.
its main argument that it takes, you know, 200 more pages to make than it needs to is that really successful people get up early. What's your hot take on that?
I think you can find quiet times and still be successful.
Yeah.
It's just that 5 a.m. happens to feel more eat your vegetables than anything else.
Yeah. I take the point that time for reflection and solitude and low distraction thinking time is valuable. It feels a little bit dogmatic to say it has to happen at a certain time.
So I know that I wake up usually about 6:30, and I'll lay there in bed for a good 45 minutes, not asleep,
Hmm.
thinking.
Yeah.
And I use that time to think. I'll have like a table of contents of sorts that I'll have to go through and make sure I tick off the different thoughts. Like, I won't go into the details, but I have different thinkings, like things I need to do, both personal and at work, things that I want to do,
Yeah.
problems I've encountered. How am I going to solve this? How am I going to word something? I try not to use Chat GPT for emails, so I think about the different ways of a person might react to what I'm going to say, and all those different things that you don't normally get a chance to do. Even if you're waking up at 5 a.m. and you're sitting in front of your computer, or you're waking up at 5 a.m. and you're having your coffee and sitting out on your patio, you still don't have that closed eye
Mm,
thought time.
yeah. Fewer
And,
inputs.
and I don't know if this word success also plays a role in here, because most people think success means money.
Mm,
It doesn't mean money.
no,
The older you get, you'll realize it's not money. It's about fulfillment.
totally.
So successful people waking up at 5 a.m. Maybe it's true if you're financially motivated.
Yeah.
Maybe you have
Yeah.
to wake up and do the markets, or you engage with business.
Wake up and meditate and go through a morning routine of whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
my hot take on that is no.
Yeah. That's been my hot take, but it's provided some entertainment on a couple of drives recently.
Well, there's also the other side of it. It's my hot take is no, because maybe I don't want it to be true.
Yeah, I mean, I woke up at 5:15 this morning to get to a 6 a.m. jujitsu class, and I will tell you, and I went to bed really early. I have been dragging my feet a lot of the day, and I'm just like, and that was 5:15. I didn't even make it to
Well,
5
you were
a.m.
late.
I
You were
was
late.
late
It
to
was
the 5
15
a.m.
minutes
class.
late.
And yeah, I was just like, this is unpleasant. And I'm okay with myself for feeling that way.
And you should be.
Yeah.
There's a video by, I think it's Kurzgesagt or something like that. It's called Optimistic Nihilism.
Yes, you sent that to me, and I quite like that.
Yeah, yeah. So just do what feels good, because
Yeah.
nobody's gonna give a shit.
Yeah, we're just a speck of dust on a planet that's a speck of dust in a moment in time.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, on that cheerful note,
Yes. Well, thank you for your time.
thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
We'll do it again.
I hope we do. I'll have
I'm
to
gonna.
let you know what I'm learning in my
Yes.
program. Well, I'm gonna go
I'll
learn
stop the
about.
recording and I'll keep talking to you after for a sec.
Okay.